Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Harriet. Today I'm going to talk you through the books that I read in the month of February. February was a pretty tough month for me. I was doing a lot of overtime at work, so I definitely couldn't read as much as what I wanted to. Actually, I only ended up reading 4 books in total, so I'm going to talk about them all today for you. The first book that I read in February was a science fiction novel, and that was The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. This was a very interesting story. We are following a man as he goes through time during a space war that is inspired by the author's experiences in Vietnam, so it's definitely steeped in a lot of history and personal experiences, which made the story even more powerful. Very war focused, but also has some very heavy touches of science fiction in there, but not heavy enough that you need to understand everything that is going on to get a grasp of the events that are happening, because if that was the case I wouldn't have enjoyed this at all. But anyway, the story is there are main characters being sent off to war to fight battles in space against this race of aliens called the Taurians, and it spans over many centuries because of the way that time dilates, time travel. Some of it is explained a little bit, but to be honest, it goes straight over my head. I can only grasp so much science. Definitely not my strong suit. But as I say, it wasn't distracting and didn't make me enjoy the story really any less. To be honest, the main thing that put me off was how war-focused this was. It was very violent, very visceral, and lots of descriptions of the different things that are happening in a war zone, and it was kind of hard for me to read, very hard for me to enjoy and want to keep reading. I would say the first half of the book is quite war-focused, and then towards the end you get more of an emotional connection to the characters. You get to see a bit more about them and their personalities, as opposed to just being battle and them in battle environments. I just felt like it was a bit quieter towards the middle to end of the book. Although at the end of the book there is a huge battle, so do keep that in mind. It definitely doesn't slow down completely, but by then I had already sort of formed a connection with the characters because of the part before that, so I think that was very well done. Just personally for me, the start of the story just dragged a little bit because I wasn't really that interested in the war aspect. It was sad to read about, but it's not something that I really want to pick up and read. But I can't deny that this was a good book and I did enjoy it towards the end. So I ended up giving it 4 stars. I would recommend it if you are really interested in science fiction, but I definitely wouldn't recommend it if it is your first science fiction to pick up. I do feel like you need to dip your toes in something a little bit more lighthearted first, but I am very glad that I read it. The next book that I read is actually a reread of one of my favourite books of all time. So you can probably guess that I did enjoy it. That is Persuasion by Jane Austen. I picked up this lovely edition while I was in Bath with my fiance, and I am so glad that I own this. It's so beautiful. So beautiful in fact that I actually read it as soon as we got home. So Persuasion is a little bit different to Jane Austen's other novels. I feel like it's not as light-hearted. It's a little bit more mature, and I think that comes from the fact that we are following a character that's a little bit older than the usual main characters that Jane Austen wrote about. Anne Elliot, who is our main character, is a little bit older. She's not that old, but she's seen as being past her prime because she hasn't been married yet, but actually the person that she wanted to get married to, she got told she couldn't because the connection wasn't strong enough in terms of financial stability and her place in society. And Anne has never found love since, but then the man that she was supposed to marry enters back into her life in some way, and it's about their relationship and how they deal with being around each other but not being allowed to be with each other and not knowing each other's feelings. It's very yearny. I really love this book. It's definitely my favourite Austen. I just think the romance is so pure and so magical to read about, and a little bit more relatable, I would say, in comparison to some of her other books. Maybe it is because the main character is a little bit older and not as childish, although Pride and Prejudice also has that kind of vibe. Whereas books like Emma, for example, she feels very young because of the gossipy nature of the book. This doesn't really have that. It's more focused on relationships, and I just absolutely love it. I would recommend it to absolutely anyone. If you like classics, definitely try this and give it a go. But I also feel like it would be appropriate if you are new to classics because it is quite a short book. It didn't take me very long to reread it all, and I'll definitely be rereading it in the future, and this edition is just perfect. The next book that I picked up is actually an audiobook, and it is The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. I wasn't sure if I was going to give this a go or not because, I don't know, it just didn't really seem like my kind of thing. I wasn't sure if it was more of a modernised, inspired by a Regency style book. That's how the Netflix adaptation comes across for me, although saying that I've only ever seen clips from it. I haven't actually seen the show itself. But with the gossipy side of things, that just felt very modern and I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. However, I did enjoy this book. I thought the narrator did a really good job of putting me into the story. I'm sure you probably know what Bridgerton is about. We're essentially following the elites of society and their relationships and their troubles and all the gossip. And there's a mysterious person who writes in the papers. She writes all the gossip about people. That is a section that I just felt didn't feel very realistic personally. That's what worried me about picking this book up and trying this series out. Overall, I did really enjoy the book. I thought it was very fun. However, there were some things in here that I didn't agree with. There's a very strange thing that happens between our two main characters. Perhaps should have had more of an impact on their relationship than what it did. Don't get me wrong, there were repercussions for what one of the characters did do. However, I don't think it was taken as seriously as what it should have been. If it was the other way around, it would have been a major problem. But it almost felt like because it was the woman doing it to the man, then it wasn't really an issue, and I don't agree with that. So that did put a little bit of a dampener on the book for me. Overall, it did get knocked down a bit by that. I would rate it 3.5 stars. I did think it was enjoyable, and I think there was potential there. However, that element of the story just really didn't sit well with me and therefore tarnished the relationship of the characters, in my opinion. And then the final book that I finished in the month of February was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. My first time trying anything by this author, and I was so captured the entire time. Such a beautiful story, literally following a circus and all of the wonderful people that work and live within it, the relationships between various characters, and there is also a bit of a competition going on in the background. I really loved the writing style of this book more than anything. I just thought it was so beautiful. So many wonderful descriptions of the different places and the people. I think the relationships between the characters were really good, and I really liked the magic. However, for some reason, there's just something about it that makes me unable to give it a 5-star rating. It just wasn't perfect, and I don't know if it's something that I'll reread, which is a shame because I really like the feeling of the book. I don't know if the story was strong enough for me personally. I think I was more along for actually reading the book and appreciating the way that it was written as opposed to being there for the story. There didn't seem to be a lot of tension for me, and I didn't really understand the competition in the end. It was just a bit strange. But I don't want to put people off. If you are into very light fantasy, I think this would be really nice to read in the autumn time or the winter. Such a lovely book, but I was unable to give it a 5-star rating. However, I did give it a 4-star. So those are the books that I read in February. Not many, but more than what I anticipated. I thought I'd only be able to finish maybe one. Please let me know down below if you read any of these, and also let me know what your favourite book from the month of February was that you read. But that is everything from me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!